So it's a delight to have Guy Verhofstadt with us, former Prime Minister of Belgium and a very important figure in European politics, particularly in the European Parliament when he was their Brexit coordinator, I think. And I've never met him before, so apart from last night, but I'm delighted because I spent 5 years of my life trying to stop Brexit, and I was the deputy chair of the campaign looking for a new referendum.
I only 3 years, so you were longer.
So we have a lot to talk about, and we only have 20 minutes. And my first question for you, Guy, is Trump good or bad for Europe?
Well, I think ultimately it could be a blessing for Europe, good for Europe. Because everything what he is doing, so everybody can follow it in real time, makes that more and more in Europe, and certainly also politicians in Europe, are of the opinion, okay, we cannot continue like that. We cannot only be an ally. Europe is very good in being an ally. But in the world of today, you have to be more than an ally, I think. More than a bunch of countries following the line, in this case of the US. You have to get your act together in Europe. And so maybe it could be a blessing in the sense that he will push us to do things that we never have done in the past.
So that's good. Well, so now let's look at it may be a blessing. Now let's see if it is actually going to be a blessing. So my first follow-up question for you is, how do you think that the EU should respond to the Trump tariffs? Obviously, they've been partly suspended. There seem to be, I don't know, at least two camps out there. There are those who want Europe to hit back hard in the same sort of way that China did, and there are those who say, oh, we're too weak to do that at the moment. Where do you sit on this question of how to hit back?
Well, I think there are better things to do than to retaliate with tariffs.
Right.
There are other things to do.
Such as?
When we talk about single market, economy, technology, for example, to build up our single market. That will be a good reaction to it, saying, look, we're going to not only make a single market for champagne and chocolate and German cars, we're going to make also a single market for telecom. We don't have. For capital service, we don't have. For digital, we don't have. We're going to make one authority like the FCC in America, so a digital authority, what we don't have. That could be a first reaction. Second reaction could be saying, look, we need more competition in Europe. We're going to change or apply our competition rules. And instead of giving to American high-tech, big tech, a few fines that don't have any effect, because a fine of a few billions for these companies doesn't make any difference, we could maybe say, look, we want to restore competition. Instead of the monopolies that exist in big tech today. The Americans will not do it. Americans did it 100 years ago in the industrial sector. They blew up the steel sector. They blew up the cooperation between air companies and airplane producers, and so on and so on. They will not do it with big tech, but we could do it with big tech, and we do the opposite. When Zuckerberg wanted to acquire Instagram or WhatsApp, well, we give green light to do that. But we could do the opposite, saying our competition rules, to use them really to make a level playing field on technology in Europe. So I think that would be single market, that other things also.
You said we've got better things to do than to retaliate. And you've mentioned so far single market, which is more or less what we have, you know, the sort of Draghi sort of ideas.
Yeah, but we don't have it in reality.
No, we don't. We need to push that. And you've talked about
the single market is 30%.
But are there other things beyond? I mean, for example, I mean, you haven't mentioned defense cooperation.
Defense cooperation. So I think what Europe needs to do the fastest as possible is to create a European defense community.
Yeah.
And the European defense community is not a new idea. It is an idea that the founding fathers already pushed forward and established in the 50s. And that was unfortunately voted down in the French National Assembly in 54. But we need to come back to this. And I am quite critical for the 800 billion effort now, because it's purely this 800 billion and 650 billion possibility to make additional debts that will not count in the stability pact. Then 150 of guarantees by the European budget. But it doesn't create a European defense community. European defense community, what it is really around a European command, a European army, European procurement. That's a European defense union. And we cannot, for the moment, we give a little bit the impression as Europeans, okay, yeah, we have understood, we will spend more on defense, and that will solve the problem. And I will tell you, maybe that will be shocking for a number of people here in the room, but that will not solve the problem.
Yeah.
If we spend 3% or if we spend 4% in the way we spend now, nothing will change. There will be no more security. Why? Because already today, with Britain, and for once I take Britain back into the European Union, and I add Ukraine to that, we spent more than 400 billion euro on defense in Europe. That is more or less half, 50% of the Americans. But we can only do 10 to 15% of the operations of the American army. So if you spend for nearly half of the Americans, together with the UK and with Ukraine, I take
well, the Ukrainians have mounted quite an effective operation.
So, exactly. So I think
if you add them in, they're probably more than 10 to 15%.
That's the reason why I'm taking them in. But if you spend nearly half of the Americans, or 40% even of the Americans, and you can only do 10% of the American army, even I, as a lawyer, know that you're 4 times less effective than the Americans. And the reason is very simple. Duplication, 130 weapon systems in Europe, the highest number of soldiers of the world, that is the problem. And so saying, look, we're going to spend 800 billion, or countries can spend 800 billion and we don't count them in the Stability Pact rules, I say that will not solve the problem.
I agree with you. But isn't part of the solution there then a much bigger chunk of money at the center? If there is a much bigger chunk of money, maybe through common borrowing or through some other mechanism,
Eurobonds,
like Eurobonds, I mean, isn't this now the time to push that really hard?
Exactly.
And don't you find it disappointing that van der Leyen didn't even put that on the table?
No, I'm fully with you. I agree with you. So we got a pandemic. At that moment, there was the same discussion. You remember that?
Yeah.
And then the Commission came with a crap proposal. Finally, Next Generation Fund was funded with what? With Eurobonds. But they decided at that moment that it was a one-time, that they would use it for once and will not repeat it in the future. That was the decision at the moment of the pandemic and the Next Generation Fund. And in fact, what you need to do is to make a serious budget in Europe. There is no serious budget in Europe. The budget of the European Union, ladies and gentlemen, is 1% of the European GDP. With the Next Generation Fund, it was doubled, temporary, with again 1%, more or less. So with 1%, even with 2% of the European GDP, you cannot be an empire. You cannot take your responsibility in the way
Europe doesn't need to be an empire in the sense of projecting power overseas. It just needs to defend its own patch of peace and prosperity.
For that, you need more than 1%.
I'm not saying I'm agreeing with you, but all I'm saying is that Europe doesn't need to take America's place and
but American budget is 25%. I take another example, Switzerland, it's a confederation, it's 15%. We want to do everything. We want to solve the pandemic, we want to have continue the single market, we want to be responsible for migration, we want to do even defense, common procurement with 1%. It's impossible.
So is there a chance, though, now? I mean, obviously, the von der Leyen proposal happened just after Munich, but since Munich, there have been even more dramatic events from the other side of the Atlantic, the Oval Office, and now this tariff mayhem. And of course, Friedrich Merz has been elected in Germany.
That's an opportunity.
Yes. So and isn't this also and also now people are questioning the dollar's status as a reserve currency? Isn't this an opportunity for the European Union to position itself through the euro as a reserve currency? An opportunity to issue a lot of debt at the central level and to put that money to use now in a sort of Keynesian fiscal boost to head off the Trump recession.
I think that we have to record you, not what I said, and we send it to the Commission and to the Berlaymont building. It's exactly that what needs to be done. And so you cannot be a reserve currency if you don't have a huge amount of EU securities in the market, no? And if you put EU securities in the market, they will be subscribed immediately, as we have seen with the Eurobonds. They were enormously popular, because for a number of institutional investors, it's far more easier to invest in a Eurobond than to invest in, I will say, 6 or 7 different national securities inside Europe. So they were hugely popular. They will be subscribed immediately. But we don't do it. So there is a problem in Europe, and the problem is still that there is no union. There is no union. There is a conglomerate, a bunch of 27 member states still based on the unanimity rule. And if one is saying, no, we don't do it, nothing happens. Or it is delayed for a number of months because we need, first of all... So that's the problem. And my personal opinion for the moment is that within the actual structure of the European Union, it will be very difficult to do everything what we are discussing here. And that it will be probably needed to make a new foundational treaty with those countries who are willing to go forward. And there I'm a little bit more optimistic. I see, we know the positions of Macron. We see Merz, who was, I think he did something what is in politics, I have never seen that, after an election using
the old
parliament to change the constitution. Okay, not bad, I would say. That is a very bold move, I would say, from, certainly in politics, it's a very bold move. And so maybe there is the only problem is that in Europe we are, there is also, we are talking about Trump, and about there is a political crisis in the US, but there is also a political crisis in Europe. In a number of countries, there are right-wing populists. The populist right is even in charge in a number of countries.
Yes, but don't you think that what's happened with Trump bullying Europe, don't you think that will undermine the right-wing populists?
I think so, yeah. We don't like it.
No.
To be, it's
they present themselves.
The mood in Europe is for the moment. Not Trump, not Putin.
No.
European unity. That's a little bit. But what we miss for the moment is leadership. Leadership. Yeah. Leadership from France, Germany, and certainly from European leadership coming forward. So what we need, in fact, is the return of the law.
Yeah.
The return of the law
coming
in the room and saying, look, what the Lord did to come out of the crisis, the stagflation crisis in which we were, was the single market idea, was the white paper, was a bold idea, and that we are missing for the moment in Europe.
Yes, I mean, it seems to me that there is also a chance, though, if you have the right leadership, to turn the tables on the right-wing nationalists, because they are not the true patriots now.
True.
They are pretending to be nationalists, but actually it's the people who want to join forces to stand up to the bullies in the West and the bullies in the East who are the true patriots. And these guys, these nationalists, they're actually they're sucking up to the enemy. which is we used to have
you
a word
already a membership card of a party? Because otherwise, I have a.
Well, if you can get me, if you can get me back my European Union citizenship, then I
would
will
love
join
to
your...
do it.
So I have.
It will happen. It will happen. The return of the UK is written in the stars, I think, but it will be progressively. And so we started already with the cooperation and innovation. That is the next will be the return of British students in Erasmus, but we will give it another name. We are in politics, so we need to adapt ourselves. And then the next phase will be the customs union. Very clearly, I think within 2-3 years there will be on the table the return of the UK in a customs union, because that was completely stupid. How stupid you can be to put yourself outside the customs union of your main market. Okay, I don't know, but well, so stupid they were. And then the next phase will be, the next step will be the single market again. I think this 3-4 steps are written in the stars will be done, and that is very important because we need absolutely the fastest as possible. Britain is absolutely key for a strong Europe. If we talk about defense, if I talk about military, but also about single market, it needs to be one of the priorities of the Union. And another priority of the Union, if I may...
Can I stick with you on the UK just for a second?
Yeah, I wanted to... Yeah, can I finish my...
Yes.
Okay. And another priority needs to be to put Ukraine the fastest as possible in the European Union. The fastest as possible. Not to wait, not to say, oh, we need first of all to solve the problem on agricultural products. No, 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 no. Let them in the European Union and we will put agricultural products outside the entrance of Ukraine. Yeah. So let's have a number of leftovers, even when they enter in the European Union. That's, in my opinion, the two big priorities when we talk about our plans for the future.
So when we talk about the UK-EU relationship, I mean, I hear what you say, but have you? There's also another idea about how to create a special relationship between the UK and the EU, and Enrico Letta has been talking a little bit about this, and that is to build on the idea of security. So security doesn't just mean defense. It means economic security, energy security, climate security, technological security, border security, food security. You can put security after almost anything. Now, at the end of the day, you may end up with the single market and the customs union, but politically, you address it orthogonally from a different angle that is more acceptable in the current geopolitical context, where everybody understands the need for security.
I'm pretty sure that that will happen, the customs union, the single market, but we will find other words for it. That's what we do in politics from time to time. We come with the same concept, we change the name, and then it goes better, and people can accept it. So certainly that will be the case. But the point, the most important point is we need European unity, and this European unity will be built, I think, with Ukraine at the one side, and absolutely with Britain at the other side of the...
I think we have time for one final question on Ukraine. Where do you stand on using the frozen Russian assets, the lion's share of which are in Belgium? There are some people who say, let's use them to help Ukraine,
I think we
and
have
some
to do
who
that,
say we shouldn't.
No, we think we need to use them. And to use them for two purposes: further armament and equipment for Ukraine, and secondly, in the future, certainly to rebuild. Once there is a ceasefire agreement, one that can be a reconstruction or the start of reconstruction, we will need these funds.
So at the end of the day, you're slightly optimistic, it seems to me. You see that there are lots and lots of challenges for Europe to get its act together, but you're still an optimist.
I'm still an optimist because, you know, optimism is a moral duty for a politician. If you are in politics and you have no optimism, then your place is not there.
I don't know if you're aware of what Gramsci said. He said he was a pessimist of the intellect, but an optimist of the will.
That's not bad.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for a brilliant chat.